I'm so delighted to welcome big friend of the show, Ukrainian MP Kira Rudik, to the studio. I know you've been in the studio with Mike, but you and I, we've been speaking since very early on after the Russian invasion of the main part of Ukraine, and we've spoken to you, the day that you got your own home bombed, sitting there with the glass in your sitting room, and living the reality of it, and being a fine speaker for your country and your countrymen and women. And we so appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Julia, for having me here in the studio. I'm so happy to be here today.
We're very excited to have you. Look, there's so much to talk about. First up, I want to talk about sort of defence and NATO and Donald Trump, but just in terms of the news we've had in the last few days, two incredibly audacious attacks by the Ukrainian forces on Russia. Particularly, I thought, fascinating after Donald Trump said so famously to your leader, President Zelensky, back in the White House a few months ago, saying, you don't hold the cards, you don't have any cards. And your leader saying, oh, I'm not playing cards, you're playing cards. Turns out you did have some cards when it came to that extraordinary drone attack on Russian jets, which took out what we think roughly a third of these bombers.
Yeah, it did. I think there is no other comment just than wow for what happened. On a human level, can you imagine how hard it was for President Zelensky not to say anything when
18 months in the planning?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was such a sophisticated and technological operation that turned to be so efficient. And I think it will go down in history of special operations, in conducting wars. And
it's up there with the pager attack on Hezbollah by Israel, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's up there in terms of taking out key bits of equipment. There's been a dispute whether it was worth, $2 billion worth of jets or $7 billion. Either way, a heck of a lot of jets that were being used to bomb your country and to bomb civilians.
Not only to bomb, but also to threaten. Is like every time when the missile carrier is up in the air raid siren is throughout Ukraine.
Life stops.
And everyone stops. Kids go to the bomb shelters. People stop working. Banks stop working. Everybody goes to and we sit and we are waiting. Would they try to attack us or not? And right now, that will be at least 1/3 of that left.
That's done. And again, what's so clever is basically having all these drones packed into crates, taken. Russians weren't aware, being paid to take these lorries near to these sites where these jets were. Some was it almost 4,000 miles away from the Ukrainian border,
almost
and then being able to be opened remotely. The drones come out and attack. I mean, it is extraordinary, and certainly something we should be looking at here.
Yeah, well, I think there will be a movie about it, 100%. But it's also a way that we are showing, not only to President Trump, but to everyone else, this is how you deal with Russia. Not with the talks, not with the appeasement, but actually you hit where it hurts. You go according to the rules of war, because you hit the military target.
Civilians,
yes, no civilians hurt, right? And so you just do what you have to do, and you get the result.
And we've also had that attack on the Kerch Bridge as well, and a bomb planted by Ukrainian spies, basically took out, again, and there's a third attack on the structure. And again, this is very, very, very important in terms of the ability of the Russians to bring supplies to Crimea. It was interesting that after this attack, and of course after that drone attack on the bombers, that there were more peace talks. I'm using inverted commas, really, peace talks between Ukrainians and Russians. This time they lasted just an hour, not looking like they're making much headway.
Well, let's just look where did it all start, right? Why these talks started? Because President Trump said that he believes that Putin respects him and that he will end the war. It's very simple. If Putin wanted to end the war, he would have done it. It's just very simple. You stop attacking Ukraine and the war is over.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Well, but President Trump saw that it had something to do with the respect by Putin, and so that's why these talks began. So there is one particular good thing about it, that we got to exchange prisoners and we got some of our people home. This is super important for us.
There have been regular prisoner exchanges.
Yes, absolutely. But do we think that these talks can bring peace? Well, I'm very skeptical, because again, the question of peace goes up with the question, how do you make sure that Putin will keep his part of the bargain? And as of right now, there has not been any significant proofs that somebody can do it except by the language of force. So we think that the good results at the battlefields will give us more leverage on the diplomatic way, but not vice versa.
And certainly President Zelensky in that infamous White House meeting with Vladimir Putin was making the point, but we've agreed to deals before with Vladimir Putin since 2014, and he never keeps his word.
Absolutely.
So much of this now, in terms of what is going on right now, is down to what Donald Trump thinks on that given day, and his golf buddy, Steve Witkoff, who is his envoy on virtually every war ongoing in the world. The trouble with this is that Donald Trump seems to, for some reason, think it's a he said, she said when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, and that somehow Vladimir Putin is in some way a victim. And I mean, it's been somehow forced. I mean, his language around Vladimir Putin and around Ukraine has been, I think, extraordinary and extraordinarily ill-informed. It's very obvious to me that many people working in the White House, and indeed certainly in the Department of State, his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, very much have changed their tune publicly. What they're saying behind the scenes, I think, very different. Do you think that there's going to come a point, though, and sooner rather than later, when Donald Trump and his closest allies, and perhaps the people who he's believing on social media, which seems to me to be a very big issue, he spouts a lot of things that I've only seen on social media, like 1 million people dead. There's nowhere near 1 million people dead. He's only got that from certain right-wing bot accounts, on the social media. That there'll come a point when he'll realise that he is being made to look like, and it's a technical term, this, a schmuck. He is being made to look a fool by the fact that Vladimir Putin has got his little finger and he's winding Donald Trump round it, and he's looking weak and he's making America look weak. And it's at that point when he will actually go back to helping Ukraine to actually win the war.
We hope that this process has started and that it is happening, and that people who want President Trump, who want good for him, right, will come to him and start telling him, look, we are all looking very bad, we're looking weak. And not only to American people, not only to Europe, but to all of those bad guys out there, to all the leaders of authoritarian regimes who look at him and they're just laughing, because basically there was not a single thing that President Trump has gotten from Putin. No. He was sending his envoys, he was trying to bring him in.
He kept waiting 8 hours humiliatingly.
Yeah, so it seems like America, the strongest country, the strongest nation right now, seems to be very weak for some reason, and humiliated, honestly, especially that when President Trump was calling for a ceasefire, Putin even didn't reply to that. They said something, and right now it seems that Putin got everything that he wanted, and President Trump seems like a person that cannot deliver even he small results. He
said he would do it day one.
Well, he said 24 hours, and he said in day one, and he said maybe in 100 days, and right now it seems much more complicated. There are no simple solutions to complicated problems.
No, and at the end of the day, the Ukrainian people are still behind your President Zelensky. You're not even in the same party as Zelensky, and you're
I am in opposition.
Full square behind him in terms of these issues. The ability of the American president to tell the Ukrainian people, yeah, you're going to give up a whole load of your territory for good, 20% of the Donbass region or Crimea for good, but we're not going to offer any guarantee to you. And in fact, Russia are requiring that there isn't a guarantee from NATO or from any troops, peacekeeping troops, Britain, France, other coalition of the willing. We've not seen many willing, but even if it was just our troops, that would not be acceptable to him. Why would Ukrainian people accept that after all they have gone through in the last 3 years?
Well, we won't. It's very simple.
He can't stop you fighting.
Absolutely. I don't think there is anyone who actually can stop us from fighting, including President Zelensky. And I think he understands it very well, that we are all united behind him for the reason right now that we all need to survive and to do it together. And right now, situation may be better, may be worse. But, Julia, remember in 2022, when Putin launched full-scale invasion, nobody believed that we will stand for more than a couple of days. Yeah. We have chosen not to capitulate. So why would we do this now? The situation is not worse for us. We have more allies who get to understanding that Putin is a threat to everyone. We work on our own weapons. We conduct such amazing operations. yes, people are exhausted. The war is terrible and the war is very hard. But we know what would happen to us if Putin conquers all of that, all of our country, and we are not going to let him do it.
And again, that's very much my view, and I've always made it very clear to my audience and to you and others that, you know, and again, this phrase that came up at P&Qs, you know, this proxy war for UK, for Europe, it's your countrymen and women who are losing their lives to keep Europe safe from Vladimir Putin. There's no doubt at all Western military experts are very worried about the threat from Putin, Xi Jinping, Iran, Islamist terrorism and the like. We've seen an announcement this week of a massive increase in our defence budget in this country from 2.3% to 2.5%. Doesn't sound massive, but we're talking billions. And an ambition, a target, different words are used, about 3%. Yesterday it emerged that the NATO chief, Mark Rutte, is actually going to be calling for a 5% budget, really 3.5% on paper, but actually an extra 1.5% in terms of cybersecurity, border control and the like. There are many countries in Eastern Europe on Russian borders who are already spending that sort of amount. Do you think that where we are, certainly in Britain, in terms of what you know, and I know you follow it closely, where we are in terms of our spending, French spending, German spending, the big economies of Europe, do you think we are anywhere close to where we need to be able to take on Vladimir Putin?
Let me ask you differently. If the war is over today, do you think in this situation Russia, China, North Korea and Iran will stop working together and stop producing weapons and supplies? I don't think so. This is why Europe, this is why the United States, democratic countries need to be ready. And unfortunately, we live in the world where we have to stand up to bad guys who wouldn't just give up on the idea to take over democratic countries. They will do it differently, including cybersecurity, including informational attacks, including conventional warfare. This is why we all need to be ready. And we obviously salute to all the decisions that are made to increase the spending for defense, because it is good for Ukraine, it will support us in our fight, but it is also good for Europe because it will allow more independence from the United States and their umbrella, and it will provide a clear understanding of how Europe will be able to sustain threats from all the other countries.
Thank you, Kira Rudik. Appreciate that. Still with us in the studio is Claire Pearsall, who's a former Conservative government advisor. What do you say to that?
I think you're right. It's the EU spending, so Europe as a whole, spending on defence has been so much less than it needed to have been for many, many years. And the war now in Ukraine has highlighted the fact we need to be able to help our allies, protect our own borders, but looking at the wider threat of what happens when Putin decides to go and take part of another country. Could be a NATO country, then we're in bigger trouble than we are.
Absolutely. Claire Pearsall, thank you. And you'll stay with me for a few more moments. Kira Rudik, Ukrainian MP, friend of the show.